the shadowed halls of the Crimson Library, a murder unfolds. A librarian lies dead, poisoned among rare books. A cryptic note, 3179, clutched in his hand. Hercule Poirot unravels a web of greed and deception, where a scholar's pride, a collector's obsession, and a student's fear collide. A hidden manuscript, the Liber Sanguinis, holds the key to a locked-room killing. Can Poirot's little grey cells expose the truth before the library's secrets claim another? Soul. Chapter 1. The Silent Stacks. The autumn wind whispered through the gnarled oaks lining the cobbled lane to the Crimson Library, a venerable institution tucked away in a quiet corner of London. Its facade, painted a deep, arterial red, seemed to pulse faintly in the October light, as though the building itself held secrets too weighty for its ancient stones. Within, the air was thick with the scent of old leather and polished wood, a sanctuary for scholars and eccentrics alike. It was here, on this crisp morning, that Hercule Poirot, the fastidious Belgian detective, found himself summoned by a hurried telephone call from Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard. Poirot stepped through the library's arched doorway, his polished shoes clicking precisely on the marble floor. His small, neat figure, clad in an immaculate black suit, contrasted sharply with the looming shelves that stretched into the shadowed recesses of the grand hall. His moustache, a masterpiece of symmetry, quivered slightly as he took in the scene. A small crowd of library staff huddled near the circulation desk, their whispers buzzing like disturbed bees. At the center of their attention stood Japp, his face a mask of professional grimness beneath his battered hat. "Poirot, thank heaven you're here," Japp said, striding forward. "We've a nasty business on our hands. Murder, plain as day, and in the most unlikely of places." Poirot's green eyes sparkled with interest. "Murder, mon ami, in a library. This is most intriguing. Lead on, if you please." Japp guided him through a maze of bookshelves, their spines gleaming with gilt titles in Latin, Greek, and forgotten tongues. They passed reading tables strewn with open volumes, where scholars had fled at the first whisper of tragedy. At last, they reached the rare books room, a chamber sealed behind a heavy oak door, its brass lock glinting in the dim light. Inside, the air was colder, heavier, as if the weight of centuries pressed upon it. There, slumped over a reading table, lay Mr. Reginald Hawthorne, the head librarian. His grey hair was dishevelled, his spectacles askew, and his hand clutched a scrap of paper. The table before him held a single book, a 15th-century grimoire, its pages open to an illustration of a serpent entwined around a chalice. The room was otherwise pristine, the shelves lined with volumes too precious for casual hands. "Poison," Japp said curtly, gesturing to the body. "No wounds, no signs of a struggle. The coroner's on his way, but I'd wager my pension it's arsenic or something like it. And then there's this." He pointed to the paper in Hawthorne's hand, inscribed with the numbers 3179, in a shaky, ink-splotched scrawl. Poirot bent closer, his gloved fingers hovering over the note without touching it. A cipher, perhaps, or a message left by the victim in his final moments. His voice was soft, almost reverent, as if addressing the dead man himself. "Monsieur Hawthorne, what did you wish to tell us?" Japp snorted. "If he's telling us anything, it's gibberish. But this room's the devil of it, Poirot, locked. Tight, only one key, and it was in Hawthorne's pocket. Whoever did this had access and nerve." Poirot straightened, his gaze sweeping the room. The shelves rose to the ceiling, their contents protected by glass panels. A single chandelier, cast a feeble glow, its light swallowed by the dark wood. There were no windows, no secondary exits, only the locked door. A puzzle, indeed, Poirot murmured. But every puzzle has its solution, Inspector. We must first understand the man. Japp filled him in as they stepped back into the hall. Reginald Hawthorne, aged 58, was a meticulous scholar, devoted to the Crimson Library's collection. He was known for his stern demeanor and unyielding standards, particularly regarding the rare books room, which housed treasures like the Liber Sanguinis, a manuscript rumored to hold alchemical secrets. Only 3 others had access to the room. Dr. Evelyn Warwick, a medievalist with a sharp tongue, Mr. Lionel Crane, a collector whose wealth matched his ambition, and Miss Clara Brent, a student assistant with a nervous disposition. Poirot's eyes narrowed. 3 suspects, each with the means to enter. But the motive, mon ami, is the heart of the matter. We shall speak with them soon, but first, let us consider the note. It is not merely a clue, it is a challenge to the intellect. He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind already sorting the threads of the mystery. The library's silence seemed to mock him, its shelves guarding their secrets as fiercely as Hawthorne had in life. Poirot smiled faintly. The Crimson Library, it has a story to tell, Inspector, and Hercule Poirot shall listen. Chapter 2. The 3 Suspects. The Crimson Library's Grand Hall, with its soaring ceiling and rows of polished oak shelves, seemed to close in around Hercule. Poirot, as he prepared to meet the 3 individuals who held the key quite literally to the mystery of Reginald Hawthorne's death. The morning light filtered through high arched windows, casting long shadows across the parquet floor, where motes of dust danced in the air like silent witnesses. The library, usually a haven of quiet study, now hummed with an undercurrent of unease, its staff and patrons whispering in corners about the tragedy in the rare books room. Poirot stood near the circulation desk, his small, immaculate figure a study in precision, his black suit pressed to perfection, his patent leather shoes gleaming, and his moustache a symmetrical marvel. Inspector Japp, ever practical, had retreated to coordinate with the constables securing the scene, leaving Poirot to conduct his initial inquiries. The detective's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, surveyed the hall with a calm intensity. He had requested the 3 suspects gather in the library's reading room, a spacious chamber adorned with portraits of long-dead scholars and a long mahogany table that gleamed under the glow of a crystal chandelier. Order and method. Poirot murmured to himself, adjusting his tie. In the chaos of crime, it is the little grey cells that bring clarity. Let us meet these 3 and see what their words and their silences reveal. The reading room door swung open, and the first to enter was Dr. Evelyn Warwick, a woman whose presence commanded attention. She was tall, her angular frame draped in a severe grey dress that matched the steel in her gaze. Her dark hair, streaked with silver, was pulled back in a tight bun, accentuating the sharp planes of her face. A scholar of medieval literature, she carried herself with the air of one accustomed to intellectual dominance. Her eyes flicked over Poirot, assessing him as she might a rare manuscript. Before she took a seat at the table, her posture rigid. Next came Mr. Lionel Crane, a man whose wealth was evident in the cut of his tailored suit and the heavy gold watch chain dangling from his waistcoat. His face was broad and florid, with a neatly trimmed beard that failed to mask a certain predatory glint in his eyes. A collector of rare books, Crane moved with the confidence of a man who believed everything had a price, including, perhaps, silence. He nodded curtly to Poirot and chose a chair at the opposite end of the table, his fingers drumming lightly on the polished surface. Last was Miss Clara Brent, a young woman barely out of her teens, whose nervous energy seemed to fill the room like a skittish colt. Her auburn hair was loosely pinned, strands escaping to frame her pale, freckled face. Her hands twisted together as she entered, her wide blue eyes darting between Poirot and the others. A student assisting Hawthorne with cataloguing, she seemed out of place among the library's elite, her simple brown dress and worn shoes marking her as an outsider in this world of privilege. She hesitated, then sat near the door, as if ready to flee at a moment's notice. Poirot stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice soft but carrying the weight of authority. "Mesdames, et Monsieur, I am Hercule Poirot, and I am here to uncover the truth behind the tragic death of Monsieur Reginald Hawthorne. He was poisoned last night between 9 and 10 o'clock, in the rare books rumour chamber to which only you three, besides the victim, had access. I ask you now to account for your movements during that hour. Speak plainly, for the truth, it has a way of revealing itself, even when hidden." Dr. Warwick spoke first, her voice crisp and measured, as if delivering a lecture. "I was in the East Wing, cataloguing a collection of 13th century manuscripts. The library was quiet, as it often is at that hour. I saw no one, nor did I hear anything unusual. My work kept me occupied until nearly 10, when I left for my lodgings." She folded her hands in her lap, her expression daring Poirot to challenge her. Poirot tilted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And this cataloguing, Madame, it required your presence in the East Wing alone. No assistants, no colleagues." Dr. Warwick's lips thinned. "I prefer to work without distraction. The manuscripts were delicate, and I trust few with their handling. My assistant, Mr. Fowler, had left earlier, around 8. I was alone." Poirot nodded, his face unreadable. "Mercy, Madame. We shall verify, of course." He turned to Crane, whose fingers had stilled on the table. "And you, Monsieur Crane, where were you when Monsieur Hawthorne met his end?" Crane leaned back, his smile a touch too smooth. "I was in the reading room, this very room, in fact examining a potential acquisition. A first edition of Donne's poetry, if you must know. I was here until 10:30, then I took a cab home. The library staff can confirm I was here. I spoke with one of the clerks about the book." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A clerk, you say? And this book, it was not in the rare books room?" "No," Crane said quickly, then hesitated, as if catching himself. "It was brought to me here. I had no need to enter the rare books room last night." "Curio," Poirot murmured, his gaze lingering on Crane's polished cufflinks, one of which bore a faint scratch. "And you, Mademoiselle Brent?" He turned to Clara, who flinched as if struck. I was shelving returns. She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, near the main entrance in the general collection. "I was there until 10, when Mr. Hawthorne told me to go home. I didn't go near the rare books room, I swear." Her hands twisted a handkerchief, its edges fraying under her nervous fingers. Poirot's expression softened, but his eyes remained sharp. "Mademoiselle, you are young, and this is a grave matter. You are certain you saw nothing unusual? No one near the rare books room?" Clara shook her head vigorously. "No, sir. It was just me and the books. And Mr. Hawthorne, of course, but he was in his office when I left." Poirot paced slowly before the table, his polished shoes clicking rhythmically. 3 accounts, each tidy, each precise. Yet one of you, or perhaps more, knows more than... You say the rare books room was locked, the key in Monsieur Hawthorne's pocket. The poison arsenic, we believe, was administered with care, and the note, this 3179, was left to taunt or to mislead. Tell me, what was your relationship with the victim? Dr. Warwick's eyes flashed. Hawthorne was a colleague. Nothing more. We disagreed often. He was pedantic, obsessed with protocol. But I respected his knowledge. I had no reason to wish him harm. Crane's laugh was a low rumble. Hawthorne was a stubborn old goat, but I didn't dislike him. He knew books, and that's what mattered. We did business, nothing personal. His fingers resumed there, drumming, a faint sheen of perspiration on his brow. Clara's voice trembled. Mr. Hawthorne was kind to me. He gave me this job, taught me about the books. I can't believe he's gone. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked away, clutching her handkerchief. Poirot stopped pacing, his gaze moving from one suspect to another. Kindness, business, respect, these are words, mise, Amos, but the heart, it speaks in actions. Let us consider who benefits from Monsieur Hawthorne's death. A scholar, perhaps, seeking to silence a rival. A collector, hungry for a treasure. Or a student, hiding a secret behind her timid eyes. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like dust. Dr. Warwick's jaw tightened. Crane's smile faded, and Clara seemed to shrink further into her chair. Poirot's voice softened, but its edge remained. I shall ask you now to remain in the library until I have spoken with each of you again. The truth, it is like a rare book, it requires careful handling to uncover its value. As the suspects rose to leave, Poirot caught a fleeting glance between Crane and Dr. Warwick, flicker of something unspoken. He made a mental note, his grey cells already weaving connections. He beckoned to a young constable stationed by the door. Ensure they do not leave the premises, s'il vous plaît, and send for the library's logbook. I wish to see who entered the rare books room. In the days before the murder. The constable nodded, and Poirot turned to the reading room's window, where the autumn leaves swirled outside. He thought of the note, 13-17-9, in the locked room. Its secret sealed as tightly as the grimoire on Hawthorne's table. The library's staff, hovering nearby, provided a few details. The rare books room was a sanctum, its contents catalogued with meticulous care. Only Hawthorne, Warwick, Crane, and Clara had keys, though the caretaker, Mr. Gibbs, occasionally cleaned the room under supervision. The logbook, Poirot learned, was kept in Hawthorne's office, a small room adjacent to the rare books room. Poirot made his way to the office, a cramped space cluttered with papers and books. The desk bore signs of recent use, an inkwell, its lid askew, and a fountain pen with a trace of blue ink matching the notes. He examined the logbook, its pages listing entries to the rare books room. The last entry, dated the previous evening, showed only Hawthorne's name at 8:45 p.m. No one else had signed in, but Poirot's eyes lingered on the page. The ink was fresh, the handwriting steady, too steady, perhaps, for a man poisoned moments later. He returned to the reading room, where Japp awaited him, holding a small vial found in the library's preservation closet. Arsenic, Japp said grimly, used for treating old books, but deadly in the wrong hands. Any of them could have got to it. Clara's job included handling preservation supplies. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The arsenic, it is a clue, but not the whole story. The note, the locked room, the Keithies are the threads we must follow. And the suspects, Inspector, they are not what they seem. Dr. Warwick's composure hides a fire. Monsieur Crane's wealth masks a desperation. And Mademoiselle Brent's fear, it may conceal more than innocence. Japp scratched his chin. You think one of them's lying? Poirot smiled faintly. Lying, mon ami, perhaps. But more than that, they are editing their truths, as one edits a manuscript. We must read between their lines. He dismissed Japp to oversee the coroner's arrival and turned his attention to the reading room's portraits, their stern faces seeming to judge the living. The library was a stage, and the suspects its players, each performing a role. Dr. Warwick, with her intellectual pride, might have clashed with Hawthorne over a professional slight. Crane, whose obsession with rare books was legendary, could have coveted a volume beyond his reach. And Clara, so young and nervous her fear suggested a secret, perhaps one tied to her lowly position. Poirot's thoughts returned to the note. 3179. Was it a catalogue reference, as he had speculated? The library's collection was vast, but the rare books room's 3,179 volumes offered a tantalizing possibility. He resolved to examine the shelves himself, but first he needed to understand the dynamics between the suspects. Had Crane and Warwick's glance been one of collusion, rivalry, or something else? And why did Clara's hands tremble so? He summoned the caretaker, Mr. Gibbs, a stooped man with a face like crumpled parchment. Gibbs confirmed that the rare books room's key was unique, but he admitted Crane had once borrowed it for a late-night inspection, claiming it was with Hawthorne's permission. He's a regular, sir, Gibbs said. Always after something rare. Mr. Hawthorne didn't like it, but Mr. Crane's donations keep the library afloat. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Donations, you say? And what did Monsieur Crane seek in return? Gibbs hesitated. Books, mostly. There's talk of one in particular, a red-bound thing, old as sin. The Liber Sanguinis, they call it. Mr. Hawthorne wouldn't let it go. Poirot thanked Gibbs and stood alone in the reading room, the chandelier's light casting prisms across his face. The Liber Sanguinis, a manuscript of legend, rumoured to hold secrets of alchemy and power. Was it the prize that lured a killer, or was it a distraction like the coded note? The suspects' alibis were plausible, yet each felt rehearsed, as if they had anticipated scrutiny. He moved to the circulation desk, where a young clerk, Miss Ellis, was sorting returns. Mademoiselle, he said gently, you saw Monsieur Crane last night. We, in the reading room. Miss Ellis nodded, her cheeks flushing. Yes, sir. He was looking at a poetry book. Asked me to fetch it from the stacks around 9. He seemed impatient. And Mademoiselle Brent? Did you see her near the entrance? Yes, sir. She was shelving books, like she said, but she kept looking toward Mr. Hawthorne's office, nervous-like. Poirot thanked her, his mind cataloguing the details. Clara's glances, Crane's impatience. Warwick's solitude, each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained incomplete. He glanced at the clock. Noon was approaching, and the coroner would soon confirm the poison's nature. Until then, Poirot would observe, question, and listen. For the Crimson Library's silence held the key to its secrets as he stepped back into the hall. The library seemed to watch him, its shelves a silent jury. Poirot's moustache curled slightly. The game, it is afoot, he murmured, and set off to unravel the threads of motive, opportunity, and deceit. Chapter 3. The Coded Note, the Crimson. Library's grand hall seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot stood before the circulation desk. The cryptic note, 3-17-9, resting in his gloved hand like a challenge issued by the dead. The morning had deepened into noon, and the library's high windows cast slanting beams of light across the polished floor, illuminating the dust that swirled in the wake of hushed conversations. The staff, still shaken by Reginald Hawthorne's murder, moved with the cautious tread of those who sensed a shadow lingering among the shelves. Poirot's green eyes, sharp and unyielding, studied the note's shaky scrawl, the blue ink stark against the paper's creamy surface. To him, it was not merely evidence, but a cipher to the killer's Minder riddle, demanding the precision of his little grey cells. Inspector Japp, his face etched with impatience, joined Poirot near a display case of illuminated manuscripts. "Any luck with that blasted note, Poirot?" he asked, his voice low to avoid the ears of a nearby clerk. The coroners confirmed it's arsenic found in Hawthorne's tea, of all things. Nasty stuff, slipped in sometime between 9 and 10 last night. But this 3-17-9 business could be a dying man's delirium, couldn't it? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. Delirium, mon ami, non man. A man poisoned with arsenic does not write with such clarity. Even in his final moments, the hand is unsteady, but deliberate. This note is a message, perhaps a misdirection. We must discover its meaning, for it is the thread that will lead us to the truth. He turned his attention to the library's layout, his mind mapping the path from the rare books room to the broader collection. The note's numbers gnawed at him 3 digits, simple yet elusive. Could they refer to a book, a shelf, a page? The rare books room where Hawthorne had met his end was the logical starting point. Poirot beckoned Japp to follow as he made his way toward the locked chamber, its oak door standing like a sentinel against the curious. The rare books room was a fortress of knowledge, its air cool and heavy with the scent of aged parchment. The shelves, lined with glass-fronted cases, held volumes that whispered of centuries past, grimoires, incunabula, and manuscripts penned by hands long turned to dust. The table where Hawthorne's body had been found was now empty, save for the 15th century grimoire, its serpentantulous illustration gleaming under the chandelier's dim glow. Poirot's eyes lingered on the book, but his focus returned to the note. "Inspector," he said, "we must consider the library's cataloguing system. The numbers 3179, they suggest a reference, perhaps to a specific volume. Let us consult the records." Japp, ever skeptical, raised an eyebrow. "You think it's that simple? A book number could be a date, a code, anything." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Simplicity, mon ami, is often the mask of complexity. Let us begin with the obvious and see where it leads. They sought out Miss Clara Brent, the student assistant, who was hovering near the circulation desk, her auburn hair dishevelled and her hands clutching a stack of catalogue cards as if they were a shield. Her blue eyes widened at Poirot's approach, and she seemed to shrink into herself, her freckled face parling. "Mademoiselle Brent," Poirot began, his voice gentle but firm, "you are familiar with the library's cataloguing system. The rare books room, how are its volumes numbered?" Clara swallowed, her fingers tightening on the cards. They're organized by acquisition order, sir. Each book has a number, and the shelves are marked by sections. There are 3,179 books in the rare books room, all catalogued in a ledger Mr. Hawthorne kept. Poirot's eyes gleamed. 3179, you say? Most interesting. And if one wished to find, say, the 317th book on the 9th shelf, could you locate it? Clara hesitated, her gaze flickering toward the rare books room. I suppose so, sir. The ledger lists the books by number and shelf, but I'd need to check. Then let us check, mademoiselle, Poirot said, gesturing toward the office, where Hawthorne's records were kept. Clara led the way, her steps reluctant, as if each one brought her closer to an unseen danger. Japp followed, muttering about the inefficiency of paper trails compared to a good fingerprint. Hawthorne's office was a cramped sanctum, its walls lined with books and its desk buried under stacks of correspondence. The ledger, a thick volume bound in black leather, lay open, its pages filled with Hawthorne's meticulous handwriting. Clara flipped to the section for the rare books room, her fingers trembling as she traced the entries. Here, she said, pointing to a line. Shelf 9, book 317. It's a treatise on alchemy. De Mysteries Veninum, from 1482. Poirot's moustache quivered with satisfaction. Excellent, mademoiselle. Let us retrieve this book and see what it tells us. They returned to the rare books room, where Clara, with a key borrowed from Japp, unlocked the door. The shelves loomed like silent sentinels, their glass cases reflecting the chandelier's light in fractured prisms. Clara navigated to the 9th shelf, counting carefully until she reached the 317th volume. She withdrew a slim, vellum-bound book, its cover worn but intact. Poirot took it carefully, his gloved hands cradling it as if it were a relic. The book was unremarkable at first glance, its Latin text dense with alchemical symbols and cryptic diagrams. But as Poirot turned the pages, he noticed a faint pencil mark circling the word veninum, Latin for poison. His eyes narrowed, and he held the page to the light, noting the mark's freshness. Curio, he murmured. This mark, it is recent, and the word poison. A coincidence, perhaps. Japp snorted. Coincidence, in a murder case. You're reaching Poirot, Nan, Inspector. In a library, every mark is a message. This book was chosen for a reason. He turned to Clara, mademoiselle, who had access to this book in recent days. Clara shook her head, her voice barely audible. Only Mr. Hawthorne, Dr. Warwick, Mr. Crane, and me. No one else could enter without a key. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The number 3179 matched the total volumes in the room, and 3-17-9 pointed directly to this book. Was it a clue left by Hawthorne, or a plant by the killer? He closed the book and handed it to Japp. Keep this safe, mon ami. It may yet speak louder than it has. As they left the rare books room, Poirot's thoughts turned to the suspects. He summoned them again to the reading room, where the air was thick with tension. Dr. Evelyn Warwick entered first, her grey dress as severe as her expression. She glanced at the book in Japp's hands and scoffed. A treatise on alchemy. Hawthorne would never deface a book with pencil marks. He was obsessive about their condition. If that mark is new, someone else made it. Her tone was dismissive, but Poirot noted a flicker of unease in her eyes. Madame, he said, you are a scholar of old texts. This word, it interests you, perhaps. Dr. Warwick's lips tightened. It's a common term in alchemical texts. Poison, elixir, transformation, these were metaphors for the alchemists. It means nothing. Poirot turned to Lionel Crane, who lounged in his chair, his gold watch chain catching the light. And you, Monsieur Crane, you are a collector. This book, it is valuable. Crane shrugged, his smile thin. It's a curiosity, nothing more. I deal in rarer things, first editions, illuminated manuscripts. That treatise wouldn't fetch much at auction. His fingers, however, betrayed a slight tremor, and Poirot's eyes missed nothing. Clara, seated at the table's edge, seemed to shrink under Poirot's gaze. Mademoiselle Brent, you catalogued books with Monsieur Hawthorne. Did he ever mention this treatise, or the word veninum? No, sir, she whispered, her hands twisting her handkerchief. He never spoke of it, but he was always careful with the books. He'd be furious about that mark. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. A mark, a note, a locked room, these are the pieces of our puzzle. The note 3179 leads us to a book marked with the word poison. Yet the book itself is ordinary, its value modest. Why, then, was it chosen? To point us to the method of arsenic, or to divert us from the true motive?
Wait.
Stopped, his gaze sweeping the suspects. Each of you had the means to enter the rare books room, to administer the poison, to write the note. But the why, this is what eludes us. Madame Warwick, your rivalry with Hawthorne is known. Monsieur Crane, your pursuit of rare books is legendary. Mademoiselle Brent, your fear suggests a secret. I ask you now, what did you know of Monsieur Hawthorne's plans for the library's treasures? The room was silent, the suspects' faces a study in guarded expressions. Dr. Warwick's eyes were cold, Crane's smile forced, and Clara's lips trembled. Poirot continued, his voice soft but piercing. There is talk of a manuscript, the Liber Sanguinus, a book of great value. Did Monsieur Hawthorne intend to sell it, perhaps, or to keep it from certain hands? Crane's face darkened. The Libero Sanguinus is a myth, detective. Hawthorne liked to tease collectors with it, but no one's seen it in years. Dr. Warwick nodded. He was secretive about it. If it exists, it's locked away, and only Hawthorne knew where. Clara said nothing, her eyes fixed on the table. Poirot made a mental note of her silence, suspecting it held more than fear. He dismissed the suspects, instructing Jap to keep them under watch, and turned to the window, where the autumn sun was beginning to fade. The note, it is a key, he murmured to Jap. But to what lock? The book, the poison, the manuscript, these are threads, but the pattern is not yet clear. We must dig deeper, Inspector, into the hearts of those who walk these halls. As Jap left to question the staff, Poirot lingered, his mind turning over the note's numbers, the pencil mark, the locked door. The Crimson Library was a labyrinth, and the coded note was its map. He would follow it, step by careful step, until the truth lay bare. Chapter 4. The Scholar's Secret, the Crimson Library, with its crimson walls and shadowed aisles, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot stepped out of the reading room, his mind alight with the threads of the mystery. The coded note, 3-17-9, and the alchemical treatise with its circled word veninum had set his grey cells humming. But he knew the truth lay not only in objects, but in the hearts of those who moved among them. The afternoon sun cast a golden haze through the library's high windows, softening the edges of the ancient shelves, yet the air remained heavy with the weight of murder. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly as he made his way to a small cafe across the cobblestone lane, where he had invited Dr. Evelyn Warwick for a private conversation. The scholar, with her sharp intellect and sharper tongue, intrigued him, a woman whose composure might conceal a fire. The cafe, a quaint establishment named the Quill and Ink, was a favorite haunt of the library's patrons. Its tables were scattered with scholars hunched over notebooks, their coffee cups ringed with stains of long debates. Poirot chose a corner table, its surface polished to a mirror-like sheen, and ordered a tisane, his preferred drink for moments of reflection. Dr. Warwick arrived promptly, her grey dress as severe as ever, her dark hair pulled back tightly, accentuating the angular lines of her face. She sat opposite him, her posture rigid, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of curiosity and defiance. Madame Warwick, Poirot began, his voice soft but precise. You are a woman of learning, a scholar of medieval texts. Yet, in the matter of Monsieur Hawthorne's death, you are also a suspect. Permit me to ask you, and the late librarian, you were not always in accord, n'est-ce pas? Dr. Warwick's lips thinned, but she did not flinch. Reginald Hawthorne was a pedant, Monsieur Poirot. He clung to outdated methods and challenged my work at every turn. We disagreed, yes, but it was professional, not personal. I had no reason to kill him. Poirot sipped his tisane, his green eyes never leaving her face. Disagreements, madame, they can grow like weeds in the garden of the mind. I have heard of a paper, a study on Chaucer, where Monsieur Hawthorne questioned your conclusions. It was a blow to your reputation, Nan. Her fingers tightened around her teacup, the porcelain clinking faintly against its saucer. Hawthorne's critique was petty, a jab at my methodology. He claimed my analysis of the Canterbury tales lacked rigor, but he was wrong. I was preparing a rebuttal, a new paper based on a rare manuscript in the library's collection. It would have silenced him, but I didn't need to resort to murder to prove my point. Poirot tilted his head, his mustache curling slightly. This manuscript, it is in the rare books room, perhaps. You were in the East Wing last night, cataloguing, you said. Yet no one saw you after 8 o'clock. A scholar alone with her book sit is a perfect alibi or a perfect opportunity. Dr. Warwick's eyes flashed, but her voice remained steady. I was alone because I work best that way. The manuscript, a 14th century copy of the Parson's Tale, required careful handling. My assistant, Fowler, had left early, and I stayed until 10, as I told you. If you doubt me, check the library's exit log. I signed out before leaving. Poirot made a mental note to verify this, his mind already turning over the details. And this manuscript, madame, it was worth your time. Worth, perhaps, a confrontation with Monsieur Hawthorne. She hesitated, a flicker of something caution, perhaps crossing her face. It was valuable, yes, but not in the way you think. Its annotations could redefine Chaucerian scholarship. Hawthorne knew of it, but he dismissed its significance. He was more concerned with his precious Libra Sanguinis and its myths. Poirot's eyes gleamed at the mention of the fabled manuscript. The Libra Sanguinis, madame, you'll believe it, exists then. Dr. Warwick shrugged, her expression guarded. Hawthorne believed it did. He spoke of it as a treasure, locked away in the rare books room. But I am a scholar, not a treasure hunter. My interest lies in texts, not legends. Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. Mercy, madame, you have been most forthcoming. But permit me one observation. Your sleeve, it bears a smudge of blue ink, the same shade as the note found in Monsieur Hawthorne's hand. A coincidence, perhaps. Her hand moved instinctively to her cuff, where a faint blue stain marred the grey fabric. For the first time, her composure wavered. I handle manuscripts daily, Monsieur Poirot. Ink is an occupational hazard. If you're suggesting I wrote that note, you're mistaken. Poirot smiled, his tone gentle but probing. I suggest nothing, madame. I merely observe. The truth, it reveals itself in the smallest details. He rose, bowing slightly. We shall speak again, I think. Dr. Warwick left the café, her steps brisk, leaving Poirot to his thoughts. The ink smudge was a tantalizing clue, but he knew better than to leap to conclusions. The note's shaky hand did not match the scholar's precise demeanor, yet her rivalry with Hawthorne and her access to the rare books room made her a figure of interest. He paid for the tisane and returned to the library, where Inspector Japp awaited him in the grand hall, clutching the logbook from Hawthorne's office. Anything from the scholar? Japp asked, his voice gruff. She's a cold one, that Warwick wouldn't surprise me if she slipped something into Hawthorne's tea just to shut him up. Poirot's mustache twitched. Cold, perhaps, but not careless. She admits to a rivalry, but her alibi is plausible. The logbook, mon ami, what does it tell us? Japp flipped open the leather-bound volume, its pages yellowed but meticulously kept. Hawthorne signed into the rare books room at 8:45 p.m. Last night, no one else is listed, but Warwick signed out of the library at 10:05. As she said, Crane left at 10:30, and Clara Brent at 10 o'clock. Nothing out of the ordinary, but it doesn't prove they didn't sneak in. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he studied the entries. The logbook, it is a record of intentions, not actions. A clever person could enter without signing or forge an entry later. We must look beyond the page, Inspector. He moved to the circulation desk, where Miss Ellis, the young clerk, was sorting returns with a nervous air. Mademoiselle Ellis, Poirot said, his voice soothing. You saw Mademoiselle Brent last night, near the entrance. Oui. Did you also see Madame Warwick in the East Wing? Miss Ellis blushed, her hands pausing over a stack of books. I didn't see Dr. Warwick, sir, but I wasn't in the East Wing. She's often there late, working alone. I did see her leave. Around 10, though she looked tired, maybe a bit cross. And Monsieur Crane, he was in the reading room. Yes, sir, he was reading that poetry book until late. He asked me to fetch some water for him around 9:30, said he was parched. Poirot thanked her and turned to Japp. Water, Inspector. A curious request for a man reading poetry. Perhaps he needed to wash down something else, a residue of guilt or of poison. Japp grunted. You're getting fanciful, Poirot, but I'll have the constables check the reading room for anything odd. Poirot's thoughts returned to Dr. Warwick's ink-stained sleeve. He made his way to the preservation closet, a small room near the rare books room where chemicals for book maintenance were stored. The closet was orderly, its shelves lined with vials and jars, each labelled in Hawthorne's precise hand. Among them was a bottle of blue ink, identical to that used in the office and on the note. Poirot examined it closely, noting its cap was slightly loose, as if recently opened. He also found the arsenic vial Japp had mentioned, its contents diminished, but not empty. The closet was accessible to Clara, who handled preservation tasks, but Dr. Warwick, as a senior scholar, could have entered it under the guise of research. Back in the grand hall, Poirot paused before a portrait of the library's founder, a stern figure in 18th century garb, his eyes seeming to follow the detective. The scholar's secret, Poirot mused, was not merely her rivalry with Hawthorne, but her ambition. The Chaucer manuscript she sought could elevate her status, but had it driven her to murder? Or was the ink smudge a careless mistake, or perhaps a deliberate plant by another? He summoned Clara Brent, who appeared with her usual timidity, her freckled face pale under the hall's lights. Mademoiselle Poirot said gently, "You have access to the preservation closet. The ink. The arsenic, did you notice anything missing or disturbed?" Clara's eyes widened, her hands twisting her handkerchief. I don't know, sir. I checked the closet yesterday afternoon, and everything seemed fine. But Mr. Hawthorne was strict about it. Only he and I were supposed to touch the chemicals. And Madame Warwick, did she ever ask to use the closet? Clara hesitated, then nodded. Once or twice, sir, for her manuscripts. She said she needed special ink for annotations, but I never saw her take anything. Poirot thanked her, his mind cataloguing the details. Dr. Warwick's access to the ink, her rivalry, her solitary work all pointed to opportunity, but motive remained elusive. The liber sanguinis, mentioned by both Warwick and the caretaker, loomed as a possible key. Was it the prize that sparked this crime, or a distraction from a more personal vendetta? As the afternoon waned, Poirot stood by the library's great window, watching the autumn leaves fall. "The scholar's secret," he murmured, "it is not only ambition, but pride. Yet pride alone does not kill. We must look deeper, to the heart of the library, where the truth lies hidden." He resolved to examine the rare books room again, to seek the liber sanguinis and its secrets. But first, he would speak with Lionel Crane, whose wealth and obsession made him a figure as compelling as the scholar. The Crimson Library's mystery was a tapestry, and Poirot was determined to unravel its threads, one careful stitch at a time. Chapter 5. The Collector's Obsession, the Crimson. Library's grand hall had grown dim as the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the polished parquet floor. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of precision, amidst the looming shelves, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him. The coded note, the arsenic, the locked rare books room all pointed to a crime of calculation. But the motive remained as elusive as a shadow in a storm. His conversation with Dr. Evelyn Warwick had revealed her ambition and the faint trace of ink on her sleeve, yet Poirot sensed the threads of the case led elsewhere. Lionel Crane, the wealthy collector with a hunger for rare books, was the next to draw his attention. A man whose wealth could buy almost anything, save perhaps the truth. Poirot arranged to meet Crane at his opulent townhouse in Mayfair, a short cab ride from the library. The evening air was crisp, the streets lined with gas lamps flickering to life, their glow reflected in the wet cobblestones. Poirot's polished shoes clicked rhythmically as he stepped from the cab, his green eyes taking in the townhouse's facade, Georgian, elegant, with tall windows that betrayed nothing of the secrets within. He adjusted his gloves and rang the bell, his moustache curling with anticipation. The door was opened by a butler, a gaunt figure with the demeanour of one accustomed to discretion. "Mr. Crane is expecting you, sir," he said, leading Poirot through a marble-floored foyer adorned with portraits of stern ancestors. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax and old money. They entered a study, its walls lined with glass-fronted cabinets that gleamed with the spines of rare books' first editions, illuminated manuscripts, and volumes that whispered of centuries past. At the centre of the room stood a locked case, its contents obscured by a velvet curtain. Poirot's gaze lingered on it, sensing it held the key to Crane's soul. Lionel Crane rose from a leather armchair, his broad frame filling the space with an air of command. His tailored suit was immaculate, but his florid face bore a faint sheen of perspiration, and his gold watch chain glinted as he extended a hand. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice smooth but edged with impatience, "I trust this won't take long. I've a dinner engagement." Poirot smiled, his bow slight but courteous. "Monsieur Crane, time is a luxury we cannot afford when murder is at hand. Permit me to sit, and we shall discuss your passion for books." Crane gestured to a chair, his smile tight. Poirot settled himself, his hands clasped over his walking stick, his eyes never leaving the collector's face. "You are a man of means, monsieur, with a collection that would make scholars weep. Yet I hear of one book, the librarians, that eludes you, a manuscript of legend. Tell me, what is its allure?" Crane's fingers tightened on the arm of his chair, but his tone remained casual. "The Liber Sanguinis, a myth, nothing more. A 14th century text, supposedly filled with alchemical secrets. Every collector dreams of it, but no one's seen it in decades. Hawthorne liked to dangle its name to keep us interested, but I doubt it exists." Poirot's moustache twitched. "And yet, monsieur, you bid fiercely against Monsieur Hawthorne at auction last month for a rare manuscript. A loss, I understand, that left you displeased." Crane's laugh was a low rumble, but his eyes were guarded. "Business, Poirot. Hawthorne outbid me for a Caxton imprint, valuable, but not worth killing for. I've plenty of treasures here." He gestured to the cabinets, but Poirot noted his glance flickered to the locked case. "Indeed," Poirot said, rising to examine the shelves. His gloved fingers traced the air above a first edition Dante, careful not to touch. "Your collection, it is magnificent. But a collector, he is never satisfied, Nan. The Liber Sanguinis, if it exists, would be the crown of your empire. Did Monsieur Hawthorne deny you this prize?" Crane's smile faded, his voice sharp. "Hawthorne was a hoarder, not a seller. He'd rather lock a book away than see it in hands that appreciate it. But I didn't poison him, if that's what you're driving at. I was in the reading room all evening, as I told you." Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to the locked case. "This case, monsieur, what does it hold? Another treasure, perhaps?" Crane stood abruptly, positioning himself between Poirot and the case. "Private papers, nothing more. My collection is open to view, but some things are personal." Eyes gleamed, but he did not press. "Of course, monsieur. Privacy, it is a luxury even a detective respects. But tell me, you were in the reading room until 10:30. You requested water from the clerk, Mademoiselle Ellis, at 9:30. A curious request for a man absorbed in poetry." Crane shrugged, his composure returning. "I was thirsty. Reading is dry work." "Dry, perhaps," Poirot said softly, "but not deadly. The arsenic in Monsieur Hawthorne's tea, it required a steady hand and a moment alone. You had a key to the rare books room, did you not? Borrowed, I am told, from the caretaker." Crane's face darkened, but his voice remained steady. "Gibbs lent me the key once, months ago, with Hawthorne's permission. I returned it. Check with him if you doubt me." Poirot inclined his head. "I shall, monsieur." "And the note, 3179, found in Hawthorne's hand, does it mean anything to you?" Crane's eyes narrowed, but he shook his head. "Gibberish. Probably Hawthorne's last attempt to be cryptic. He loved his little games." Poirot rose, his movements deliberate. "Merci, Monsieur Crane. You have been most illuminating. We shall speak again, I think." He bowed and left the study, the butler escorting him to the door. as he stepped into the evening chill. Poirot's mind was alight with impressions, Crane's guarded demeanour, the locked case, the flicker of fear when the liber sanguinis was mentioned. The collector's obsession was palpable, a hunger that could drive a man to desperate acts. Back at the Crimson Library, Poirot found Inspector Japp in the grand hall, reviewing notes with a constable. The library was quieter now, its patrons dispersed, leaving only the hum of gas lamps and the faint rustle of pages. Japp looked up, his face weary. "Well, Poirot, did Crane spill anything useful?" Poirot's moustache curled. "He spills nothing, mon ami, but he reveals much. His obsession with rare books, it is a fire that burns brightly. The liber sanguinis he dismisses as a myth, yet his eyes betray him, and the locked case in his study, it hides something he does not wish us to see." Japp grunted. "Sounds like motive to me. If Hawthorne was holding back that book, Crane might have slipped him the arsenic to get it." "Perhaps," Poirot said, pacing slowly, "but motive alone is not enough. We need evidence, the how, the when, the key to the rare books room." "It is a puzzle, Monsieur Gibbs, the caretaker. He confirms Crane borrowed it once. We must learn if it was copied." Japp nodded, jotting a note. "I'll have Gibbs questioned again." And the reading room, nothing turned up there, no poison, no clues, just that poetry book Crane was reading. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The poetry book, Inspector. Have it examined. A collector like Crane, he does not read for pleasure alone. Perhaps it holds a clue." He moved to the preservation closet, where the arsenic vial and blue ink bottle still stood. The ink, he noted, was a precise match for the notes, and the arsenic's quantity suggested careful use, not a reckless theft, but a calculated one. Crane, with his wealth, could have acquired arsenic elsewhere, but the library's supply was convenient, accessible to all three suspects. Poirot summoned Mr. Gibbs, the caretaker, who shuffled into the hall, his crumpled face wary. "Monsieur Gibbs," Poirot said, his voice gentle but probing, "you lent Monsieur Crane the key to the rare books room. Was it returned promptly?" Gibbs nodded, his hands twisting his cap. "Aye, sir. He had it for an hour, maybe two, few months back. Said he needed to check a book's condition. Mr. Hawthorne approved it, though he wasn't happy. And the key, it was the same when returned. No signs of tampering." Gibbs frowned, thinking. "Looked the same to me, sir. But I ain't a locksmith. Mr. Crane's a big donor, so we don't ask too many questions." Poirot thanked him, his mind turning over the possibility of a duplicated key. Crane's wealth could buy such a thing, and his access to the library made it feasible. But why kill Hawthorne? For the liber sanguinis, or something more personal? As the evening deepened, Poirot stood by the library's great window, the city's lights twinkling beyond. "The collector's obsession," he murmured, "it is a flame that consumes. But is it the flame of greed or of fear? The liber it calls to him, and we must follow its call." He resolved to search the rare books room for the manuscript, suspecting it lay hidden among the shelves. But first he would speak with Clara Brent, whose fear and silence hinted at a truth yet unspoken. The Crimson Library's mystery was a labyrinth, and Poirot's grey cells were the thread to guide him through. Chapter 6. The students fear the Crimson Library stood silent under the weight of evening, its crimson walls absorbing the last glimmers of twilight that filtered through the high windows. Hercule Poirot, his small figure a study in precision, amidst the towering shelves, felt the mystery of Reginald Hawthorne's murder tightening like a coiled spring. The coded note, the arsenic, the elusive liber sanguinis sic, was a thread in a tapestry of deceit. But it was the human heart that held the key. His conversation with Lionel Crane had revealed a man consumed by obsession. Yet Poirot's instincts urged him to probe deeper into the timid figure of Clara Brent, the young student whose nervous demeanor suggested more than mere grief. Her fear, he sensed, was a beacon in the fog of this case. Poirot found Clara in the library's archive, a dimly lit room tucked behind the main hall, where stacks of uncatalogued papers and manuscripts awaited sorting. The air was thick with the musty scent of old paper, and a single gas lamp cast flickering shadows across the cluttered tables. Clara stood at a workbench, her auburn hair falling loose from its pins, her freckled hands sorting letters with a trembling precision. She started at Poirot's approach, her blue eyes wide, as if expecting accusation rather than inquiry. "Mademoiselle Brent," Poirot began, his voice soft as a caress but sharp with intent, "you are troubled, Nesty. The death of Monsieur Hawthorne weighs heavily, but there is more. Permit Hercule Poirot to listen, for the truth, it is a burden best shared." Clara's hands froze, a letter slipping from her fingers to the floor. She bent to retrieve it, her movements jerky, and when she straightened, her face was pale. I don't know anything, sir," she stammered. "Mr. Hawthorne was kind to me. I'd never hurt him." Poirot seated himself at the table, his gloved hands resting on his walking stick, his green eyes studying her with a gentleness that belied their scrutiny. "Kindness, mademoiselle, it is a rare gift. Yet you tremble as if pursued by a shadow. Tell me, what did you see last night, in the hours before Monsieur Hawthorne's death?" Clara's lips quivered, and she clutched the letter like a talisman. "I told you, sir. I was shelving returns near the entrance until 10, when Mr. Hawthorne sent me home. I didn't see anything." "Strange." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache curling slightly. "Strange, mademoiselle. Nan, let us be precise. You were near the entrance, but Mademoiselle Ellis, the clerk, saw you glancing toward Monsieur Hawthorne's office. Why? Was there something or someone that drew your eye?" Clara's breath hitched, and she looked away, her fingers twisting the letter until its edges crumpled. I heard voices, sir. Not loud, but sharp, like an argument. It was coming from Mr. Hawthorne's office, around 9:15, maybe. I didn't want to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help it." Poirot leaned forward, his voice low and coaxing. "Voices, mademoiselle, whose voices speak freely, for the truth protects the innocent." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the door as if expecting an intruder. It was Mr. Hawthorne and Mr. Crane. They were talking about a book. Mr. Crane was angry, saying he'd pay anything for it, but Mr. Hawthorne said it wasn't for sale, that it belonged to the library. I didn't hear the name, but Mr. Crane sounded desperate. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind seizing on the detail. "Desperate, you say? Most interesting. And this book, mademoiselle, could it have been the Liber Sanguinis?" Clara's face paled further, and she nodded almost imperceptibly. "I think so, sir. Mr. Hawthorne mentioned it once, said it was too dangerous to let out. I didn't understand, but he sounded serious." Poirot's moustache twitched with satisfaction. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful, but tell me, you have access to the preservation closet where the arsenic was kept. Did you notice anything amiss yesterday?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, and her voice broke. "I checked the closet in the afternoon, like always. The arsenic vial was there, but I didn't count the contents. Mr. Hawthorne was the only one who used it for treating books. I swear I didn't take any. Poirot patted her hand, his touch light but reassuring. Courage, mademoiselle. I do not accuse you, but I must know all. Did anyone else, Madame Warwick, perhaps, or Monsieur Crane, ask to use the closet? Clara shook her head vigorously. No, sir. Only Mr. Hawthorne and I were supposed to go in there. But sometimes Dr. Warwick asked for ink or binding supplies. She was in there last week, I think, for her Chaucer manuscript. Poirot nodded, filing away the information. And last night, after this argument, did you see Monsieur Crane or Madame Warwick near the rare books room? No, sir, Clara said, her voice steadier now. I stayed by the entrance until Mr. Hawthorne told me to go. I didn't see anyone go near that room. Poirot rose, his movements deliberate. You have done well, mademoiselle. Go now, but stay within the library. The truth, it is near, and your honesty brings it closer. Clara managed a weak nod and returned to her papers, her hands still trembling. Poirot stepped into the hall, where Inspector Japp was waiting, his face a mask of impatience. Well, Poirot, Japp said, flipping through his notebook. What's the girl got to say? She looks scared enough to confess to anything. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Fear, mon ami, is not always guilt. Mademoiselle Brent overheard an argument between Monsieur Hawthorne and Monsieur Crane concerning a book, likely the Libesang. Crane's desperation, it is a motive we cannot ignore. Japp's eyes narrowed. Crane again. He's got the money and the nerve to pull this off. But the girl, she could be lying to cover her own tracks. Nan, Poirot said, pacing. Slowly, her fear is genuine, but it is not the fear of a murderer. She hides something, perhaps, but not murder. We must learn what she knows of this book, and why it drove Monsieur Crane to such passion. Japp grunted, jotting a note. I've got men checking Crane's story about the reading room. The poetry book he was reading clean as a whistle. No poison, no marks. But I'm having Gibbs look at the key again. If Crane had a copy made. We'll find out. Poirot nodded, his mind turning to the preservation closet. The arsenic, Inspectorette, was taken with care, not haste. Mademoiselle Brent confirms the vial was intact yesterday afternoon, but she did not check its contents. Monsieur Crane, with his borrowed key, or Madame Warwick, with her access to supplies, could have taken it. But the note, 317-9 it, remains our guide. He moved to the rare books room, where the alchemical treatise De Mysteries Veninum still lay under Japp's guard. Poirot examined it again, his gloved fingers tracing the pencil mark around Veninum. The mark was fresh, deliberate, yet Hawthorne's fastidious nature made it unlikely he had made it. Was it a clue planted by the killer, or a mistake by an innocent hand? Poirot summoned Miss Ellis, the clerk, to confirm Clara's account. She stood nervously, twisting a strand of her dark hair. Yes, sir, she said. Clara was by the entrance all evening, shelving books. I heard voices from Mr. Hawthorne's office around 9:15, but I couldn't make out who. It sounded heated, though. And Madame Warwick, Poirot asked. Did you see her in the East Wing? Not after 8, sir, Miss Ellis replied. She was working alone, like always. I saw her leave at 10, looking cross, as I told you. Poirot thanked her and turned to Japp. The argument, it places Monsieur Crane near Monsieur Hawthorne's office at the critical time. Yet Madame Warwick's absence is equally telling. We must search the East Wing for traces of her work and, perhaps, of her intentions. They moved to the east wing, a quieter section of the library where manuscripts were stored in climate-controlled cases. Dr. Warwick's workspace was a small alcove, its table strewn with notes and a 14th-century copy of The Parson's Tale. Poirot examined the papers, noting a vial of blue ink identical to that in the preservation closet. A single sheet bore a faint smudge, as if someone had written hurriedly. "The ink, Inspector," Poirot said. "It links Madame Warwick to the note, yet the handwriting does not match. A puzzle within a puzzle." As they returned to the hall, Poirot's thoughts churned. Clara's fear suggested she knew more than she said, perhaps about the liber sanguinis or the argument she overheard. Crane's desperation, Warwick's ambition, and the locked room's mystery formed a triangle of suspicion with the coded note at its heart. "The student's fear," Poirot murmured. "It is a mirror to the truth. We must look into it and see what it reflects." He resolved to confront Crane again, to press him on the liber sanguinis and the borrowed key. But first, he would search the rare books room for the manuscript itself, suspecting it lay hidden among the shelves, a prize worth killing for. The Crimson Library's secrets were close, and Poirot's grey cells were ready to unveil them. Chapter 7. The locked room. The Crimson Library stood cloaked in the deepening shadows of evening, its crimson walls absorbing the last vestiges of daylight like a wound staunched by time. Hercule Poirot, his meticulous figure a beacon of order, amidst the silent shelves, felt the mystery of Reginald Hawthorne's murder pressing upon him with an almost tangible weight. The coded note, the arsenic, the whispered allure of the liber sanguinis piece of the puzzle pointed to the rare books room, a locked sanctum where the librarian had met his end. It was here, Poirot knew, that the truth lay hidden in the mechanics of a crime that seemed impossible yet was chillingly real. His grey cells hummed with purpose as he resolved to unravel the enigma of the locked room. The grand hall was nearly deserted, save for a lone constable stationed at the entrance, his lantern casting a feeble glow across the parquet floor. Inspector Japp, his face etched with the fatigue of a long day, met Poirot near the circulation desk, where the gas lamps flickered, lending an eerie dance to the shadows. "We've turned the reading room upside down," Japp said, his voice gruff. "Nothing but dust and that poetry book Crane was reading. The arsenic vial's been sent for analysis, but it'll take time." "What's your next move, Poirot?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache curling slightly. "The move, mon ami, is to the heart of the mystery, the rare books room itself. The door, the lock, the key are the stage on which this crime was played. We must examine the scene with the precision of a surgeon." They approached the oak door of the rare books room, its surface polished to a deep sheen, its brass lock glinting like a watchful eye. The key, found in Hawthorne's pocket after his death, rested now in Japp's evidence bag, but Poirot had requested it be brought for inspection. He took it carefully, his gloved fingers tracing its contours. It was a heavy, ornate thing, its teeth worn but intact, designed for a lock that permitted no compromise. The door itself showed no signs of force, no splintered wood, no bent hinges. Yet Poirot's eyes narrowed as he knelt to examine the lock plate, his magnifying glass catching the lamplight. "Regard as Inspector," he said, pointing to faint scratches around the keyhole, barely visible to the untrained eye. "These marks, they are fresh, delicate, not the work of a crowbar, but of a tool more subtle perhaps, a duplicate key or a pick." Japp squinted, his skepticism evident. "A duplicate key? That's a stretch, Poirot. Hawthorne kept this key on him at all times." The caretaker swears there's only one. Poirot straightened, his smile enigmatic. One key, oui, but the mind of a criminal, it is inventive. Monsieur Crane, he borrowed this key once, did he not? And Madame Warwick, with her scholar's cunning, or even Mademoiselle Brent, with her access to the library's secret seni, could have made a copy. We must test this hypothesis. Japp nodded, though his expression remained dubious. I'll get Gibbs in here again. If Crane or anyone else tampered with that key, he might know something. They entered the rare books room, its air-cool, and heavy with the scent of ancient vellum. The shelves, lined with glass-fronted cases, held their treasures in silent vigil. The chandelier above, casting a soft glow over the table where Hawthorne had been found, slumped over the grimoire. The book remained, its serpentantulous illustration a mute witness to the crime. Poirot circled the room, his eyes scanning every detail: the polished floor, the unmarred walls, the single door. No windows, no vents, no hidden panels. The room was a fortress, its only breach the locked door. How? Inspector Poirot murmured, his hands clasped behind his back. The arsenic was in Monsieur Hawthorne's tea, administered between 9 and 10. The door was locked, the key in his pocket. No one signed into the logbook after him. Yet someone entered, poisoned him, and left the note 3-17-9. How? Japp rubbed his chin, his mind grappling with the impossibility. Could have been someone already in the room with him. Crane, maybe, after that argument Clara overheard. Or Warwick, sneaking in earlier. Poirot shook his head. Nan, mon ami. The logbook shows only Hawthorne's entry at 8:45. If another was with him, they left no trace. And the tea, where was it prepared? Not in this room, I think. He moved to the table, examining the grimoire again. The pencil mark circling in the alchemical treatise, found via the note's numbers, lingered in his mind. It was too deliberate, too convenient. He turned to the shelves, his fingers hovering over the glass cases. The liber sanguinis, inspectorate, is the ghost. In this mystery, if it exists, it is here, hidden. But the killer, they entered and left without force. The lock, it is the key to the key. Japp summoned Mr. Gibbs, the caretaker, who shuffled into the room, his crumpled face wary under the chandelier's light. Mr. Gibbs, Poirot said, his voice gentle but probing. You lent the key to Monsieur Crane some months ago. Tell me, did you ever suspect it was not returned as it was? Gibbs twisted his cap, his eyes darting to the door. I checked. It, sir, when he gave it back, looked the same to me. But Mr. Crane, he's a sly one. Always poking about, asking for special access. Mr. Hawthorne didn't like it, but his donations kept the library going. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And Madame Warwick or Mademoiselle Brent, did they ever request the key? Gibbs shook his head. Not them, sir. Dr. Warwick used her own key for the rare books room, and Miss Clara only went in with Mr. Hawthorne. She's too timid to ask for such things. Poirot thanked him, dismissing him with a nod. He turned to Japp, his voice low. The scratches, Inspector, they suggest a duplicate key or a skilled hand with a lockpick. Monsieur Crane, with his wealth, could afford such a thing, but Madame Warwick, her precision, her access to ink, she too could have planned this. And Mademoiselle Brent, her fear may hide a cleverness we have not yet seen. Japp grunted, jotting notes. I'll have a locksmith look at this door. If there's a duplicate out there, we'll find it. But what about the tea? Hawthorne didn't brew it In here no kettle, no cups. Poirot's moustache twitched. Precisement the tea, it was brought to him. We must find where it was prepared, and by whom. The library's staff room, perhaps, or his office. They moved to Hawthorne's office, a cramped space adjacent to the rare books room. The desk was cluttered with papers, an inkwell with blue ink matching the note still open. A tray near the door held a teapot, a single cup, and a sugar bowl, all untouched since the coroner's initial inspection. Poirot examined the cup, its interior stained with the remnants of tea. The arsenic, it was in this cup, he said. But who poured it? A visitor, a colleague, a friend? Jap frowned. The staff rooms down the hall. The clerks make tea there, but anyone could have slipped in. Clara's got access, and Warwick's been seen there, fetching supplies. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. We must question the staff again, and search for traces of arsenic beyond the preservation closet. But the lock, Inspector Ritt, is the heart of this. Without entry, there is no crime. He returned to the rare books room, his eyes scanning the lock once more. The scratches were faint, but their presence suggested a practiced hand, not a moment of panic. He pictured Crane, with his collector's cunning, or Warwick, with her scholar's precision, or even Clara, her fear masking a deeper intent. The note, the tea, the key all converged on this room, a stage for a silent murder. As the library's clocks struck 8, Poirot stood by the door, his hands clasped behind his back. The locked room, he murmured, it is a challenge too. The intellect, but Hercule Poirot, he does not falter. The truth, it is here, in the scratches, in the silence. He resolved to trace the tea's origin and to press Crane on the duplicate key. But first, he would search the rare books room for the liber sanguinis, convinced it was the prize that drove this crime. The Crimson Library's secrets were locked tight, but Poirot's grey cells were the master key, ready to turn the tumblers of truth. Chapter 8. The Hidden Book, the Crimson Library. Its crimson walls, now steeped in the gloom of night, stood as a silent sentinel over the secrets it harboured. Hercule Poirot, his small, meticulous figure dwarfed by the towering shelves, felt the pulse of the mystery quickening. The locked rare books room, the arsenic-laced tea, the cryptic note, 3-17, -9 each, was a piece of a puzzle that pointed to a hidden truth. One Poirot was determined to uncover. The faint scratches on the lock had deepened his suspicion of a duplicate key, but his grey cells now turned to the elusive liber sanguinis. The manuscript whispered to be the heart of this crime. If it existed, it lay within the rare books room, concealed among its treasures. Poirot resolved to find it, for in its pages might lie the motive for Reginald Hawthorne's murder. The grand hall was nearly empty, the library's staff having retreated to their homes, leaving only a skeleton crew of constables and the ever-present Inspector Jap. The gas lamps cast a soft, flickering glow, their light swallowed by the shadows of the shelves. Jap, his notebook worn from constant use, joined Poirot near the circulation desk, his face etched with the strain of a case that defied easy answers. "No luck with the locksmith yet," Jap said, his voice gruff. "He's coming tomorrow to check the door, but I've got men searching the staff room for traces of that tea. What's your plan, Poirot?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his moustache curling with purpose. "The plan, mon ami, is to seek the prize that lured our killer. The liber sanguinis is no myth, I think. It is here, in the rare books room, hidden by Monsieur Hawthorne's cunning. We must find it, for it is the flame that drew this moth to its doom. Japp raised an eyebrow, skeptical but accustomed to Poirot's theatrics. A book worth killing for. I'll believe it when I see it. But I'll get Clara to help. She knows those shelves better than anyone. Poirot nodded, his mind already mapping the rare books room's labyrinthian shelves. He summoned Clara Brent, who appeared from the archive. Her auburn hair dishevelled, her freckled face pale under the lamplight. Her blue eyes darted nervously, as if the library itself watched her. "Mademoiselle Brent," Poirot said, his voice gentle but firm, "you are familiar with the rare books room's secrets. We seek a manuscript, the librarians will. You assist us in searching the shelves." Clara's hands twisted her handkerchief, her voice barely audible. I'll try, sir. Mr. Hawthorne never spoke of it directly, but he kept some books, hidden. He said they were too valuable to catalogue openly." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the hesitation in her words. "Hidden, mademoiselle, where? Might such a book be concealed?" Clara swallowed, glancing toward the oak door of the rare books room. Sometimes he'd place special volumes inside others, hollowed out to keep them safe. He didn't trust the glass cases alone. Poirot's mustache twitched with satisfaction. "Most ingenious. Come, let us explore this possibility." They entered the rare books room, its air cool and heavy with the scent of aged leather. The chandelier cast a dim glow over the shelves, their glass fronts reflecting the light infractured. Prisms. Clara, clutching a key borrowed from Japp, unlocked a case, her movements tentative. Poirot directed her to begin with the section near the alchemical treatise. The Mysteries Veninum, suspecting the killer's choice of that book was no coincidence. Japp stood by, his impatience tempered by curiosity, as Clara carefully pulled volumes from the shelves. Poirot's gloved hands hovered over each book, his eyes scanning for signs of tampering, irregular weight, loose bindings, or faint marks. After an hour of meticulous search, Clara paused at a heavy tome, a 16th century herbal bound in faded green leather. "This one feels odd," she said, her voice trembling. "It's heavier than it should be." Poirot took the book, his fingers probing its spine. A faint seam suggested a hidden compartment. With Clara's help, he opened the cover, revealing a hollowed-out space within. Nestled inside was a slim, crimson-bound manuscript, its leather cover embossed with a faint alchemical symbol, circle pierced by a dagger. The title, in faded gold, read Liber Sanguinus. Poirot's heart quickened, though his face remained impassive. "Voila," he murmured, lifting the manuscript with care. The hidden book, found at last. Japp leaned closer, his eyes wide. "Is that it? The Liber Sanguinis? Blimey, it's real." Poirot opened the manuscript, its pages brittle but pristine, filled with Latin text and intricate diagrams of alchemical processes. A faint chemical odour clung to it, sharp and unmistakable. "Arsenic," Poirot said softly, his nose wrinkling. "Not only a poison for murder, but a preservative for books. Monsieur Hawthorne, he treated this manuscript to protect it, yet it may have sealed his fate." Clara gasped, stepping back. "Arsenic, but Mr. Hawthorne used it sometimes for the oldest books. I didn't know it was on this one." Poirot's eyes gleamed, studying her reaction. "You did not know, mademoiselle, yet you handled the preservation supplies. Curious, Nan." Clara's face flushed, her hands trembling. "I swear, sir, I never touched this book. Mr. Hawthorne kept it secret, even from me." Japp snorted, his skepticism clear. "Convenient, That you're in and out of that closet, girl. Easy enough to slip some arsenic into his tea. Poirot raised a hand, silencing Jap. Patience, Inspector. Mademoiselle Brent's fear, it is not the mask of guilt, but of knowledge. She knows more than she says, but we shall uncover it gently. He turned to the manuscript, flipping through its pages. The text spoke of transformation, of secrets encoded in blood and fire, but nothing immediately suggested a motive for murder. Yet its presence, hidden so carefully, confirmed its value. This book, Poirot said, it was Monsieur Crane's obsession, and perhaps Madame Warwick's curiosity. But why kill for it? To possess it, or to prevent its sale? Jap scratched his chin. Crane's got the money to buy anything. If Hawthorne wouldn't sell, maybe he took matters into his own hands. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Madame Warwick, seeking to protect her scholarly domain. Or even Mademoiselle Brent, though her motive is less clear. We must confront Monsieur Crane with this discovery. They secured the liber sanguinis in Jap's evidence bag, locking the rare books room behind them. Poirot summoned Crane to the library's reading room, where the collector arrived, his florid face set in a mask of irritation. His tailored suit was impeccable, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as he saw the manuscript in Poirot's hands. Monsieur Crane, Poirot said, his voice smooth but piercing. We have found the liber sanguinis hidden in the rare books room. You called it a myth, yet here it is. Did you know of its hiding place? Crane's smile was tight, his fingers adjusting his cufflinks. I told you, Poirot, it's a legend. If Hawthorne hid it, he was playing games, as always. I didn't know it was there. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the slight tremor. In Crane's hand, games, monsieur, or treasures you coveted. You argued with Monsieur Hawthorne about a book the night he died. This book, perhaps. Crane's face darkened, but he laughed coldly. An argument, yes, about a Caxton imprint, not some alchemical nonsense. I didn't need to kill him for a book I could buy elsewhere. Poirot leaned forward, his voice low. But this book, monsieur, it is unique, and the arsenic on its pages, it matches the poison in Monsieur Hawthorne's tea. Your gloves, they are new, are they not? To replace those tainted by handling this manuscript. Crane's composure faltered, his hand brushing his new leather gloves. You're reaching. Detective, I've handled many books and need preservation. That doesn't make me a murderer. Poirot smiled, his gaze unyielding. We shall see, monsieur. The truth, it is like a book it opens with time. He dismissed Crane, who left with a scowl, and turned to Jap. The manuscript, Inspector. It is the heart of this crime. But the arsenic on its pages, did the killer know it was there, or was it a coincidence? We must test it, and the tea for traces of this book's touch. Jap nodded, jotting a note. I'll get the lab on it. But Clarichy was here, handling books. She could have known about the arsenic. Poirot's moustache twitched. Mademoiselle Brent, she is a puzzle. Her fear suggests a secret, but not necessarily guilt. We must press her gently, and Madame Warwick too, for her ink-stained sleeve links her to the note. As the library's clocks struck 9, Poirot stood by the great window, the city's lights, a distant constellation. The hidden book, he murmured. It is a prize and a poison. The killer sought it, or feared it. We are close, Inspector, but the final page remains unturned. He resolved to analyze the manuscript's arsenic and to confront Dr. Warwick. On her scholarly ambitions, the Crimson Library secrets were unraveling, and Poirot's grey cells were poised to reveal the killer's hand. Chapter 9. The false cipher, the Crimson Library. Its crimson walls, now cloaked in the velvet darkness of night, stood as a silent witness to the unravelling mystery within. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of precision amidst the shadowed shelves, felt the threads of Reginald Hawthorne's murder drawing tighter. The discovery of the liber sanguinis, hidden within a hollowed-out herbal and laced with traces of arsenic, had brought the case into sharp focus. The coded note 3-17-9 had led to an alchemical treatise, but Poirot's grey cells now whispered that the note itself was a deception, a false trail laid to obscure the killer's path. The library's grand hall was empty save for the flicker of gas lamps, their light casting eerie patterns across the parquet floor. Poirot, his green eyes gleaming with purpose, prepared to confront the suspects with his findings, determined to expose the truth in the grand tradition of his method. Inspector Japp, his face lined with the exhaustion of a relentless day, joined Poirot in the reading room, where the long mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier's soft glow. The liber sanguinis rested in an evidence bag, its crimson cover a stark reminder of the stakes. "The lab's working on the arsenic traces," Japp said, his voice gruff. "They'll confirm if it matches the poison in Hawthorne's tea." "But that note, Poirot, 3-17-9, it's got us chasing our tails. Are you sure it's not just Hawthorne's last scribble?" Poirot's moustache curled, his smile enigmatic. "None, mon ami. The note, it is too deliberate, too precise. A dying man, gripped by arsenic's agony, does not write with such clarity. It is a cipher, oui, but a false one, designed to mislead. Tonight, we shall test this theory with those who walk in its shadow." He had summoned the three suspects, Dr. Evelyn Warwick, Lionel Crane, and Clara Brent, to the reading room, where the air was thick with tension. The portraits of stern scholars on the walls seemed to watch, their painted eyes judging the living. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his hands clasped behind his back, his polished shoes clicking softly as he paced. The suspects entered one by one, each bearing the weight of scrutiny. Dr. Warwick, her grey dress as severe as her expression, took her seat with the poise of a queen facing a tribunal. Her sharp features betrayed no fear, only a faint irritation, as if the interruption were an affront to her intellect. Lionel Crane followed, his broad frame filling the room with an air of forced confidence, his gold watch chain glinting as he adjusted his cuff. Clara Brent, last to enter, seemed to shrink under the chandelier's light, her auburn hair dishevelled, her freckled hands twisting her ever-present handkerchief. Poirot raised the coded note, its blue ink stark against the paper. "Et monsieur," he began, his voice soft but carrying the weight of accusation, "we stand at the heart of a crime most foul. Monsieur Hawthorne was poisoned with arsenic, his body found in a locked room, this note in his hand. 3-17-9. It led us to a book, De Mysteries Veninum, marked with the word poison, but I, Hercule Poirot, declare this note a falsehood, written not by the victim but by the killer, to confuse and divert." Dr. Warwick's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting. "A bold claim, Monsieur Poirot. If the note is false, why point to a book at all? It's absurd to think someone would fabricate such a clue." Poirot's gaze met hers, unyielding. "Absurd, Madame Nan. It is clever. The note directs us to a book, yes, but its purpose is to cast suspicion elsewhere. The ink, it matches that found in your workspace and on your sleeve. A scholar's carelessness, or a deliberate act. Dr. Warwick's face flushed, but her composure held. I've told you, ink is common in my work. If someone used my ink, they did so to frame me. I was in the East Wing, not the rare books room. Poirot turned to Crane, whose florid face had paled slightly, his fingers still on his cup. And you, Monsieur Crane, you argued with Monsieur Hawthorne the night he died, over a book, the Liber Sanguinis, which we have found hidden and laced with arsenic. You called it a myth, yet your desperation betrays you. Did you forge this note to shift blame to Madame Warwick? Crane's laugh was harsh, his eyes darting to the manuscript in Japp's hands. You're grasping, Poirot. I wanted books, yes, but I didn't need to kill for them. That note's nothing to me. Hawthorne's nonsense, probably meant to taunt me. Poirot's eyes gleamed, moving to Clara. And you, Mademoiselle Brent, you heard this argument, yet you say little. Your fear, it speaks louder than your words. Did you see the note written, perhaps? Or know who entered the rare books room? Clara's lips trembled, her voice barely audible. I didn't see anything, sir. I was shelving books, like I said. The note, I don't know about it. I swear. Poirot paced slowly, the note held aloft like a banner. The note, it is written in ink from Madame Warwick's desk, yet its hand is not hers. It is shaky, but not the shake of a dying man. It is a forgery, meant to point us to the alchemical treatise, to suggest a motive tied to poison. But the true motive lies elsewhere with the Liber Sanguinis, a prize worth killing for. He stopped before Crane, his voice low and piercing. Monsieur Crane, your gloves, they are new, purchased, perhaps, to replace those contaminated by the arsenic on the Liber Sanguinis. You entered the rare books room using a duplicate key and poisoned Monsieur Hawthorne's tea to secure the manuscript. Crane's face reddened, his voice rising. Prove it, detective. I was in the reading room, as the clerk confirmed. You've got nothing but guesses. Poirot's smile was serene, his eyes unblinking. Guesses, monsieur. Nan. The scratches on the lock, the arsenic on the book. Your argument with Hawthorne, these are not guesses, but facts. The note, it was your attempt to implicate Madame Warwick, using her ink to muddy the waters. Dr. Warwick gasped, her composure cracking. You think I'm a pawn in his game? That's outrageous. I had no part in this. Clara's eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking. Please, sir, I didn't do anything. I didn't see the note. I didn't. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. Peace, mademoiselle. The truth, it is near. The note, it points to a book, but its true purpose is distraction. The killer, they wished us to chase shadows, while the Liber Sanguinis was their true aim. Japp, standing by the door, cleared his throat. We've got the lab results coming, Poirot. If the arsenic on that book matches the tea, we'll have our man or woman. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The arsenic, it is the link, but the note, it is the lie. We must examine the tea's origin, the staff room, perhaps, where it was prepared, and the key. Inspector has the locksmith found evidence of a duplicate. Japp shook his head. Not yet, but he's working on it. The staff room's clean, so far no arsenic, just tea and sugar. Poirot's moustache twitched. Clean, you say? Yet the tea was poisoned. Someone brought it to Monsieur Hawthorne, someone he trusted. We must question the staff again and search the suspect's belongings for traces of arsenic or ink. He dismissed the suspects, noting Crane's scowl, Warwick's indignation, and Clara's trembling relief. As they left, Poirot stood by the reading-room's window, the city's lights a distant murmur. "The false cipher," he murmured. "It is a mirror of the killer's mind, clever, but not clever enough. The liber sanguinis, it is the key, but the hand that wrote the note, it will betray them." He resolved to trace the tea's preparation and to press Clara further. Suspecting her fear hid a detail she had not yet shared. The Crimson Library's mystery was a tapestry of deception, and Poirot's grey cells were poised to unravel its final threads. Chapter 10. The Confession, the Crimson Library. Its crimson walls, now steeped in the stillness of night, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hall, the weight of the mystery pressing upon him like a tangible force. The discovery of the liber sanguinis, the false cipher of 3-17-9, and the arsenic-laced tea had woven a web of clues, each pointing to a calculated crime. Yet it was the human heart, its greed, its fear, its pride that Poirot knew would unravel the truth. His confrontation with the suspects had exposed their tensions, but the killer's mask remained intact. Now, armed with the evidence of the hidden manuscript and the forged note, Poirot prepared to tighten the noose, his grey cells poised to elicit a confession. The reading room, with its long mahogany table and stern portraits, was a stage set. For revelation, the chandelier cast a soft glow, its light dancing across the polished wood, while the shadows seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Inspector Japp, his face a mixture of skepticism and anticipation, stood by the door, clutching the evidence bag containing the liber. The lab results had confirmed the arsenic on the manuscript matched that in Hawthorne's tea, a damning link that narrowed the field. Poirot, his small figure commanding the room, had summoned the suspects once more. Dr. Evelyn Warwick, Lionel Crane, and Clara Brent. Dr. Warwick entered first, her grey dress as unyielding as her demeanour, her sharp features set in a mask of defiance. Lionel Crane followed, his broad frame exuding a forced calm. Though his florid face betrayed a flicker of unease, his new gloves stark against his tailored suit. Clara Brent, last to arrive, seemed to shrink under the weight of scrutiny, her auburn hair loose, her freckled hands clutching her tattered handkerchief. The air was thick with tension, the suspect's eyes darting between Poirot and the crimson-bound manuscript on the table. Poirot raised a hand, his voice soft but resonant, cutting through the silence. "Madame et Monsieur, we stand at the precipice of truth. Monsieur Hawthorne was poisoned with arsenic, his body found in a locked room, a false note, 3179, in his hand. This note, it led us to a book, but its purpose was deception. The true prize was the liber sanguinis, hidden and laced with the very poison that killed him. Tonight, the killer will be unmasked." Dr. Warwick's lips thinned, her voice sharp. "You've made your accusations before, Monsieur Poirot. If the note is false, as you claim, why suspect me? My ink may have been used, but I was in the East Wing, as the logbook confirms." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his moustache curling. "Your ink, madame, and your ambition. Your rivalry with Monsieur Hawthorne was fiercer paper on Chaucer, challenged by his critique. Yet the note's handwriting, it is not yours. It is a clever forgery, meant to cast suspicion on you." He turned to Clara, whose eyes were wide. "With fear, Mademoiselle Brent, your fear speaks of secrets. You overheard Monsieur Crane argue with Monsieur Hawthorne about a book, the liber sanguinis. Did you see more than you have told?" Clara's voice trembled, her hands twisting her handkerchief to shreds. I told you everything, sir. I heard them argue, but I didn't see the note. I was shelving books, I swear." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Crane, who sat rigid, his fingers still on his cufflinks. "And you, Monsieur Crane, you coveted the liber sanguinis. You argued with Monsieur Hawthorne, who refused to sell. You had access to a key, perhaps a duplicate, and the arsenic on the manuscript matches that in his tea. Your gloves, they are new, to hide the traces of your crime, Nan." Crane's face reddened, his laugh forced but brittle. "You're spinning tales, Poirot. I was in the reading room, as the clerk confirmed. I didn't need to kill for a book. I could buy it elsewhere. You've no proof." Poirot's smile was serene, his voice low and piercing. "Proof, monsieur. The proof is in the details. The scratches on the rare book's room lock, they speak of a duplicate key, made when you borrowed it months ago. The arsenic, it clings to the liber sanguinis, a book you knew was hidden, for you pressed Monsieur Hawthorne to reveal it. The note, written in Madame Warwick's ink but in a hand too steady for a dying man, was your attempt to shift blame." Crane's composure cracked, his voice rising. "You're mad. I didn't touch that book, didn't write that note. If there's arsenic, it's Hawthorne's. Doing he treated his precious manuscripts himself." Poirot stepped closer, his eyes unblinking. "Nan, monsieur, the arsenic, it was not merely for preservation. You took it from the preservation closet, where Mademoiselle Brent worked, and slipped it into Monsieur Hawthorne's tea, prepared in the staff room. You entered the rare books room with your duplicate key, poisoned him, and left the note to mislead. The liber sanguinis was your prize, but you did not find it that night, for Monsieur Hawthorne had hidden it too well." Crane's hands slammed on the table, his face a mask of fury. "Enough, you've nothing but guesses. I didn't kill him." Dr. Warwick's eyes widened, her voice sharp. "If he used my ink, he's a fool as well as a murderer. I'd never be so careless." Clara's tears spilled over, her voice a whisper. "Please, sir, I didn't do it. I didn't know about the note or the book until you found it." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. "Monsieur Crane, your greed betrayed you. The tea, it was brought to Monsieur Hawthorne by a hand he trusted yours, perhaps under the guise of a friendly visit. The clerk, Mademoiselle Ellis, saw you request water, but it was to wash away the arsenic's trace, Nan. The liber sanguinis, it was your obsession, and when Monsieur Hawthorne refused to yield, you acted." Crane's face crumpled, his voice hoarse. "All right, damn you, I did it. Hawthorne wouldn't sell, wouldn't even show me the liber sanguinis. I offered him a fortune, but he laughed, said it belonged to the library. I couldn't let it slip. Away not again. I took the arsenic from the closet, slipped it into his tea when I brought it to his office. The note I used Warwick's ink to throw you off, make it look like she had a grudge. I didn't find the book that night, but I thought I'd get another chance." Dr. Warwick gasped, her hand rising to her throat. Clara sobbed, her relief palpable. Japp stepped forward, his handcuffs glinting in the chandeliers. "Light, Lionel Crane, you're under arrest for the murder of Reginald Hawthorne." Crane's shoulders slumped, his defiance gone. "It was mine, by right," he muttered. "That book, it was everything." Poirot watched as Japp led Crane away, the constables flanking him. Dr. Warwick rose, her face pale but composed. "You were right about the ink, Monsieur Poirot. I'm glad it wasn't my hand that wrote the note." Poirot bowed slightly. "Your rivalry, madame, it was a motive, but not the crime. Your work, it will continue, I trust." Clara, still trembling, looked to Poirot with gratitude. "Thank you, sir. I was so afraid. I thought you'd think it was me." Poirot patted her hand, his voice gentle. "Fear, mademoiselle, it is a shadow, but the truth casts light. You are free of it now." As the room emptied, Poirot stood. Alone, the liber sanguinis still on the table. The library's silence enveloped him, its secrets laid bare. "The confession," he murmured, "it is the final page, but the story, it is written in greed. The liber sanguinis, it tempted a man to his ruin. He resolved to ensure the manuscript's safekeeping, its allure no longer a danger. The crimson library's mystery was solved, but its lessons lingered, a testament to the power of the little grey cells." Chapter 11. The order restored, the crimson library stood bathed in the pale light of dawn, its crimson walls glowing softly as if cleansed by the resolution of the night's dark truths. Hercule Poirot, his small, impeccable figure a beacon of order amidst the ancient shelves, felt the weight of Reginald Hawthorne's murder lift like a fog dispelled by sunlight. Lionel Crane's confession had unravelled the mystery, the arsenic-laced tea, the forged note 3179, the coveted liber sanguinis revealing a crime born of greed and desperation. Yet Poirot's work was not complete until the library's harmony was restored, its secrets secured, and its denizens freed from suspicion's shadow. His grey cells, ever vigilant, turned now to tying the final threads of this intricate tapestry. The grand hall was quiet, the gas lamps extinguished, their glow replaced by the natural light streaming through the high windows. The air, once thick with tension, now carried a tentative calm, as if the library itself exhaled in relief. Inspector Japp, his face weary but satisfied, stood near the circulation desk, overseeing the constables as they catalogued the last of the evidence. The liber sanguinis, its crimson cover a stark reminder of the crime's heart, rested in a locked evidence case, destined for safekeeping in the library's vaults. Poirot, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor, approached. Japp, his green eyes bright with the clarity of resolution. "Well, Poirot," Japp said, tucking his notebook into his coat, "you've done it again." Crane's locked up, singing like a canary about his obsession with that blasted book. The arsenic on the liber sanguinis matched the tea, and the locksmith confirmed scratches on the key likely from a duplicate. Case closed. Poirot's moustache curled, his smile serene but tinged with melancholy. Closed, mon ami, but not without lessons. The mind of the criminal, it lacks symmetry, yet it follows a pattern greed, in Monsieur Crane's case, warped his soul. The liber sanguinis, it was his siren, and he crashed upon its rocks. Japp grunted, his pragmatism unshaken. Greed or not, he's off to the gallows. But what about the girl, Clara, and Warwick? They're in the clear. Poirot nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. Madame Warwick's rivalry was fierce, but her ink-stained sleeve was a misdirection, not a crime. Mademoiselle Brent's fear, it was born of innocence, not guilt. She overheard the argument, but her silence was to protect herself, not to deceive. They are free, Inspector, to resume their lives. He turned to the great window overlooking the cobblestone lane, where autumn leaves swirled in a gentle breeze. The library staff had begun to return, their whispers subdued but hopeful. Poirot summoned Dr. Evelyn Warwick and Clara Brent to the reading room, where the long mahogany table stood empty, its surface gleaming under the chandelier's restored glow. The portraits of stern scholars seemed less judgmental now, As if acknowledging the justice done, Dr. Warwick entered. Her grey dress as severe as ever, but her sharp features softened by a trace of relief. Clara followed, her auburn hair neatly pinned, her freckled face no longer pale with fear. She clutched no handkerchief, her hands steady for the first time. Poirot stood at the table's head, his presence commanding yet gentle. A conductor orchestrating the final notes of resolution. Madame Warwick, Mademoiselle Brent, he began, his voice soft but resonant. The shadow of suspicion has lifted. Monsieur Crane has confessed to the murder of Monsieur Hawthorne. Driven by his obsession with the liberalis, the note, the arsenic, the locked room, they were his tools of deception. But the truth, it has prevailed. Dr. Warwick's lips curved in a faint, grudging smile. You've done well, monsieur. Poirot, I admit I feared you'd pin it on me, with that ink business. Hawthorne and I clashed, but I'd never stoop to murder. My work will prove my worth. Poirot inclined his head, his eyes gleaming. Your work, madame, it is your legacy. The Chaucer manuscript, it awaits your pen. Let it silence your critics, as you intended. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but they were of gratitude, not fear. Thank you, sir. I was so scared, thinking you'd believe I did it. Mr. Hawthorne was kind to me. He gave me a chance when no one else would. I want to keep working here. To honor him, Poirot's smile was warm, his voice gentle. Mademoiselle, your courage has grown. The library, it needs young minds like yours. Perhaps Madame Warwick will guide you, Nan. Dr. Warwick glanced at Clara, her expression softening. Further, I could use an assistant with her diligence. If she's willing, I'll mentor her in cataloguing and research. The library's treasures deserve care. Clara's face lit up, a spark of hope replacing her timidity. I'd like that, Dr. Warwick. Thank you. Poirot nodded, his moustache curling with satisfaction. The order, it is restored. The Crimson Library, it will heal, its secrets safe once more. The liber sanguinis, it returns to its vault, no longer a temptation to greed. As the women left, their steps lighter, Poirot joined Japp in the hall. The inspector was overseeing the transfer of evidence to Scotland Yard, his efficiency a contrast to Poirot's reflective mood. You're a wonder, Poirot, Japp said, clapping him on the shoulder. Crane's confession tied it all up, neat as a bow. The tea was poisoned in the staff room, likely when he brought it to Hawthorne's office under the guise of a chat. The duplicate key's still missing, but we'll find it. Poirot's eyes twinkled. The key, it is a detail, but the heart of the crime is clear. Monsieur Crane's greed blinded him to reason, and his cleverness with the note, it was his undoing. The little grey cells, they see through such deceptions. Japp chuckled, shaking his head. You and your grey cells. I'll stick to fingerprints and evidence bags. But you've earned a rest, my friend. Poirot's smile faded, his gaze distant. Rest, mon ami, perhaps, but the mind, it is never still. The Crimson Library, it reminds us that knowledge is power, but also peril. We must guard it wisely. He stepped to the great window, watching the dawn paint the cobblestones in hues of gold and rose. The library staff moved with renewed purpose, their whispers now of hope rather than fear. The liber sanguinis would remain locked away, its alchemical secrets no longer a lure for the desperate. Dr. Warwick would continue her scholarship, her rivalry with Hawthorne a footnote in her legacy. Clara, emboldened by her ordeal, would grow under Warwick's guidance, a new guardian of the library's treasures. Poirot's heart was light, but his mind lingered on the fragility of order. The order restored, he murmured, it is a delicate balance. The human heart, it seeks, it strives, it errs. Yet in its errors we find truth. He turned from the window, his walking stick tapping softly as he prepared to leave. The Crimson Library stood as it always had, a bastion of knowledge, its wounds healing under the weight of justice. Poirot's work here was done, but the city, beyond awaited, its mysteries ever calling to his little grey cells. Chapter 12. The final reflection. The Crimson Library, its crimson walls now softened by the golden light of late morning, stood as a monument to the triumph of order over chaos. Hercule Poirot, his small, meticulous figure a symbol of precision, sat in his London flat, the city's hum a distant murmur beyond his window. The murder of Reginald Hawthorne had been solved. Lionel Crane's confession had laid bare a crime driven by greed for the liber sanguinis, a manuscript whose allure had proven deadly. The forged note, the arsenic-laced tea, the scratches on the locked door had been unravelled by Poirot's little grey cells, restoring harmony to the library's hallowed halls. Yet, as was his custom, Poirot lingered in reflection, savouring the symmetry of a case resolved while pondering the timeless frailties of the human heart. The flat was a haven of order, its furniture arranged with geometric precision, its surfaces gleaming with polish. A silver tray bore a steaming cup of hot chocolate, its rich aroma curling through the air like a final note of indulgence. Poirot sipped it slowly, his green eyes half closed, his moustache a perfect curve above his lips. On the table before him lay his notebook, its pages filled with neat annotations of the Crimson Library case diagrams of the rare books room, timelines of the suspect's movements, and a sketch of the cryptic note 3179. Each detail, meticulously recorded, had led to the truth. Yet Poirot's mind sought the deeper lesson beneath the facts. He rose, his polished shoes silent on the Persian rug, and moved to the window overlooking Baker Street. The city bustled, bellacabs clattering, vendors calling, Londoners weaving through their daily dance. Yet Poirot's thoughts remained with the library, its shelves a silent chorus of human striving. The Crimson Library, he murmured, his voice soft as a prayer, it is a mirror of the soul. Its books, they hold knowledge, but also temptation. Monsieur Crane, he saw only the prize, not the price. His mind replayed the case's final moments, Crane's confession, raw with the anguish of a man undone by his own obsession. Dr. Evelyn Warwick's relief, her scholarly pride intact despite the shadow of suspicion. Clara Brent's transformation, her fear giving way to a quiet resolve under Warwick's mentorship. The liber sanguinis, now locked in the library's vault, was no longer a siren's call but a relic of a crime. Its arsenic-tainted pages, a warning to those who would let greed eclipse reason. Poirot returned to his chair, setting the hot chocolate aside to polish his walking stick with a silk cloth, a ritual that soothed his restless mind. The case had been a puzzle of exquisite complexity, a locked room, a poisoned cup, a forged note designed to mislead. Yet it was the human motives, Crane's avarice, Warwick's ambition, Clara's fear that had guided Poirot's deductions. The heart, he mused, it is the true labyrinth. The little grey cells, they navigate its twists, but the heart, it writes the story. He opened his notebook, reviewing the final clues. The scratches on the rare book's room lock, faint but telling, had confirmed Crane's use of a duplicate key, crafted months earlier during his borrowed access. The arsenic, taken from the preservation closet, had been slipped into Hawthorne's tea during a feigned friendly visit. the forged note written in Warwick's ink to cast suspicion on her rivalry. Clara's overheard argument had been the linchpin, revealing Crane's desperation for the liber sanguinis. Each detail, like a note in a symphony, had harmonized to expose the killer. Poirot's thoughts drifted to Inspector Japp, whose gruff pragmatism had grounded the investigation. Japp had telephoned that morning, confirming Crane's formal charge and the discovery of the duplicate key hidden in his Mayfair townhouse, tucked inside a hollowed-out first edition. "You were right, Poirot," Japp had said, his voice tinged with reluctant admiration. "That key clinched it. The Yard owes you one." Poirot had smiled, declining praise, for the victory belonged to method, not ego. He closed the notebook, his fingers lingering on its cover. The Crimson Library would endure, its treasures guarded by Warwick's intellect and Clara's newfound courage. The liber sanguinis, its myth dispelled, would remain a curiosity, not a curse. Yet Poirot knew other mysteries awaited, other hearts driven by passion or folly. "The world," he said softly, "it is a library of motives, each page a riddle. Hercule Poirot, he is its reader." He rose, adjusting his tie with a final flourish, his moustache curling with satisfaction. The hot chocolate was finished, the walking stick gleamed, and the case was closed. Outside, London called, its secrets whispering in the wind. Poirot stepped to the door, ready to answer, his grey cells ever vigilant, his heart content in the symmetry of justice restored.